Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and today I'm back with what I feel is a very special video because it's featuring the For Australia SVG File Bundle by Scrapbook.com. This is a set of SVG files that was released by Scrapbook.com. You can see a little overview on screen here, and 100% of the proceeds from the sales of this bundle will be given to the Red Cross, to the Australian Red Cross, in the attempt to help all the people and the wildlife which has been heavily affected by the fires that are taking place in Australia right now. I have a quick card today featuring this SVG file bundle. I used a couple of different files that you can see I'm loading in my Canvas workspace to then send to my scan and cut machine. The bundle is full of different files with beautiful floral patterns. You have some great sentiments and also some butterflies, so I recommend you check it out, and you will find the link to it as well as to all the supplies used today in the description box down below. After having converted my SVG file to FCM files, I sent everything through my scan and cut machine, and then I cut my patterns out of some Neenah Solar White 110 pounds cardstock. I started working on this koala die cut, which I decided to color and shade using some alcohol markers. I used some warm grays, and I'm going to add some very simple shading, basically outlining the cutout with my darker marker first, then blending everything towards the center of the cutout with my mid-tone marker. And then once this step is completed, I will use my lighter marker to blend everything out and completely cover the area. If you want to, you can cut this out from some colored cardstock, or you can add shading with your distress inks or distress oxides. There are so many ways in which you can add color to your die cuts, and today I did something a little bit different from what I usually do and used my beloved alcohol markers instead. I'm making sure that I have a nice and smooth blend, and in order to intensify the contrast a little bit, I'm going in with a second layer of color. I sped up the coloring quite a bit today, but I hope the steps are clear. And by the way, I didn't go into too much detail on how to use SVG files with your scan and cut machine, but I have some videos on my channel where the process is outlined in a little bit more detail, and I will have a link to those videos in the description box down below as well. I used some dull greens to color in the branch the koala is holding onto, and again I'm adding my darker markers on the outside areas of this portion of the die cut, and then blending towards the center with my mid-tone and then my lightest marker. I used some super bright pinks for this heart cutout here that I will nest in the center of the koala later on. Again, having the darker markers in the outside portions of the cutout and the lighter ones in the center. The shading today is very simple, there is no light source, it's just to add a little bit of dimension to these die cuts. One of the sentiments you can cut out using files in the For Australia SVG file bundle is this "It's a Small World" sentiment, which I thought was perfect for the purposes of today's card, but you also have hope, prayers and love, which you can use for everyday cards if you will. I used my Distress Oxide in Vintage Photo and my Scrapbook.com blending brushes to add some color to the outline of the cutout. I'm coloring Australia with the same dull green markers that I used for the branch where the koala is holding on, again having my darker markers on the outside areas of the cutout and the lighter ones on the inside. And with the same pinks as before, I colored in also this tiny heart that will go in the center of Australia. The next step was to work on my card base, and the file that I used cuts a rectangle that is 4¼ by 5½ inches and cuts the koala bear out of it. I used the Heffy Doodle Clover frames dies to add a stitched detail all around my card base, and then I'm going to use the new fancy Foliage Stencil, also by Heffy Doodle, together with my Distress Oxide in the color Peeled Paint to add a little bit of shading in the areas around the koala and where my sentiment will go. I'm using my blending brushes so that I can have my Distress Oxide fade into white, and then I can go ahead and adhere my card front to a top folding A2 card base. Next, I'm going to nest in the koala bear, there where I have the cutout, and if you can see, there is a little piece missing between the arm of the koala and the branch, and there I'm missing the stencil pattern. And to make up for that, I picked up my stencil, I lined it up with the pattern I have on my card front, and then I used my Illustrator markers to color in the missing areas, and this is good enough so that nobody will notice that this wasn't blended with my Distress Oxides in the first place. At this point, I could go ahead and adhere my sentiment. I started from the outline and I'm using the pattern created by the fancy Foliage stencil to make sure that it's nice and straight, and then I can start adhering all the letter cutouts inside this outline. The glue that I'm using is Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive, and I'm adding it to my card before adhering the letters. I'm doing this for these larger letters that form the word world, but for the smaller ones at the top of the sentiment, I will add glue at the back of the letters and then adhere them down so that I don't create a mess on my card base. I decided that I wanted to add some color and shading to my sentiment too, so I took again my alcohol markers in some golden yellow shades, and again I added some shading by coloring the outline of the letters with darker markers and blending them out towards the center. To create a little bit of interest and variation in the sentiment too, I used some darker shades for the word world and some lighter shades for the it's a small part of the sentiment. I also debated whether to add some crystals or embellishment to the card, but then I decided I wanted to keep it simple, and here you can see the final result. Just another reminder that all the proceedings from the sales of the For Australia SVG File Bundle by scrapbook.com will be donated to the Australian Red Cross, and that you can find a link to the SVG file as well as the supplies that I used today in the description box down below. As always, thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.